Good morning. So it's great to be here. Independence Day. Feeling very independent today. There was a movie many years ago called Independence Day by the Emmerlich brothers, and one of the people who worked with the Emmerlich brothers, his name was Jose Bahar. Jose worked with the Emmerlich brothers, and it's an interesting thing because my Talmida ended up marrying Jose Bahar, part of the Emmerlich brothers Independence Day movie group. And today, Jose Bahar has moved to the Iratika, to the old city, where he helps out in the IDF and he does outreach and became a Baal Tshuva, and they have 50 guests every Shabbat, and it's an amazing thing. So I guess he found his own independence. I'll give you a little background. The rabbi asked me to. So I am from Cleveland. I'm born in Cincinnati, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, got married to my sweetheart when she was young and I was even younger. We just celebrated our 36th wedding anniversary. Thank you.
Many more.
Amen, amen. In 1988 we got married, and Baruch Hashem, 20 plus grandchildren and 11 children, and Michael El Chayil, my students ask me, Rabbi, when are you going to stop having kids? Overpopulation. Don't you got to worry about that? So I tell them I'll stop at 6 million. I think the world owes us more than we owe the world at this point. Plus inflation, that's right. Actually, I did stop, but the grandchildren, So, so basic history, got married, learned Torah, became a pulpit rabbi for 10 years. I was a rabbi in Brooklyn. Then I became the rabbi in a little city called Perth Amboy, New Jersey. You may have heard of it, right near the Outer Bridge crossing. And then at the age of 30, I moved to California, became the rabbi at UCLA, but when it was still safe. I was actually friendly with the Palestinians. They were my next door neighbors, and we got along, so the world has changed somewhat. And at that time, I began opening campus programs around Southern California, USC, SDSU, UCSD, UCSB, Cal State Northridge, campuses, just starting Jewish life on campus. And then at some point, I branched out and started Jewish life on over 100 campuses around the country. GW, UF, UCF, Berkeley, you name it. I was involved on some level, Yale, Harvard, each of these campuses to install a rabbi, train the rabbi in. And that's really what I do today for an organization called Olami. I go around and I train in rabbis and how to work with campuses. And obviously this year things have gotten dramatic. There's a lot of difficulty and a lot of opportunity at the same time when it comes to Jewish life and spreading Judaism while defending the Jewish people, and that's what I do. Today I live in Muncie, New York. We moved in the year 2006, 2007, and I go around to travel the country. I also run trips to Israel and to Poland. And I do Shabbat.com, as the rabbi mentioned, which is a website and an app that allows people to find places for Shabbat in about 230 countries around the world in over 4,000 cities. So you can go anywhere, go on the website and say, hey, looking for a place in Eilat, I'm looking for a place in San Francisco, and you'll find all the people, and that's a fun, nice thing that we do. In addition, we do our own Shabbat hosting. We host about 60, 70 people each week for Shabbat, and they eat and sleep over, so they're there for a 24-hour party each week, except when I do a family week, which is this week. It's going to be a family week, but usually that's the case. Hollywood. So what's my connection to Hollywood? So here's how it began. As a rabbi in UCLA, I davened in a particular shul right near UCLA, and once a fellow comes over to me. He was involved in Hollywood, he was an agent, And he said to me, Rabbi, I got a question. And I said, why don't you ask the local pulpit rabbi whose shul I was davening at? He said, he's more of an older gentleman. I don't feel I connect. Can I ask you? And I said, sure. And he began asking me his questions. And eventually, some of the other Hollywood people began coming over. And I said, why don't we just do a class once a month? We'll call it the Hollywood class. And it's for people in the industry. And as time went on, that class grew and grew and grew. And over time, I had people from all across the industry coming to a very exclusive class that took place in Westwood. And we had writers and directors and producers and the VP of Warner Brothers, Sony and Disney, and just all of these people were connected. And it was a beautiful opportunity for me, both to have a little bit of influence on Hollywood, which is a nice thing, and also I would get my students jobs in Hollywood. Now, what's my motivation to get them a job at Warner Brothers? I don't have a motivation to get them a job at Warner Brothers. I don't really care about that. But what I really wanted them to do was to spend a little bit of time in yeshiva, because I'm a big believer in a yeshiva experience. So I would play Let's Make a Deal. And the way it worked was I would tell my students, you go to yeshiva for a month or two, and I'll get you a job at Sony. And it was a win-win. I was a happy rabbi because they had a chance to invest in their Judaism. And they were happy because they got a job at Sony. And the people who would come to my class were really helpful in helping out my students. And that was my experience. Before I speak about that, because we are in the middle of Independence Day, so baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet, although that was the commercial Chevrolet's a way of marketing Chevrolet, but it used to be baseball, hot dogs, and apple pie. So I'll tell you a quick little baseball story, and I had a connection with a baseball story that I think segues into the Hollywood crowd. So after I moved from LA to New York, I got a call from one of my students. Now, this student was a high-profile fellow. I'm still very connected to him. He was the writer and producer of a show that became sort of a pop culture iconic show. It was called Friends. Okay, you guys have heard of Friends. So he was the guy who started Friends, and he wrote the first, I think, 82 episodes, and he produced it, and his name was Michael Borkow. And he would come to my class once a month, and we had a very deep connection, me and Michael. So when I came to New York, I got a call, and he said, look, there's a big agent who lives in New York, and he runs a management called If Management. And he has a lot of famous people that he's the manager of. And he's getting married. His name is Steve. He's getting married to a young lady named Raquel. And they don't feel connected to any rabbi. So they're looking for a rabbi to marry them off, to be the Masada Kiddushin. And I said, I know the perfect person. Would you sit down with Steve and Raquel and perhaps be their rabbi? I said, sure, and I called up Steve and I said, I'll be happy to meet you in Manhattan. We'll do breakfast together. You'll get to meet me. So we sat down, we really hit it off, both Steve and Raquel and myself. And I said, you know what? Why don't you come to my house for Shabbat? And they said, sure, we'd love to experience that. So I told my kids, be on your best behavior, a famous manager. And they were very charmed with the kids and the whole Shabbat environment. And in the middle of the meal, he says, I have a question for you. And if you could answer this question, you're my rabbi. I said, what's the question? And he said, I want you to tell me right now, who's leading the American League in batting average? Now, here's my confession. I used to be a big baseball fan. Like, I knew all these statistics. Eventually, it sort of died down as baseball itself has sort of like gone a little under the radar, I think. But once in a while, I still flip through, they used to have such a thing called a newspaper before that became obsolete. And you know, you're stuck in the bathroom sometimes, got a newspaper, like, okay, that's... And I actually had just recently seen who was leading. And I was so excited, so happy with myself. I know the answer. I said, you know who's leading? His name is Joe Mauer. Anyone recognize that name? There we go, Joe Mauer. I think he was on the Twins. Shortstop of the Twins. Wow, okay. Joe Mauer. He said, you're right, Rabbi. You're going to be my rabbi. You're going to officiate us. I have a request. I said, sure, what is it? He said, under the chuppah, I want you to mention Joe Mauer, because he's my favorite player, and when you officiate, mention Joe Mauer. And I'm thinking, wow, the holiest day of the year, you're going to have me mention Joe Mauer? It just seemed sort of a little off. But you know, he's very passionate. He wanted me to mention Joe Mauer. I said, okay, I'll do my best. So the wedding is approaching, and I'm thinking, how am I going to mention Joe Mauer? How am I going to tie him into the chuppah? And then I figured I'll do it the way they advertise in the middle of a movie for Pepsi. You know, like where they have like this one like frame in the middle of the movie that there's a subliminal suggestion. Hey, Pepsi or popcorn. And you don't even realize that you saw it, but all of a sudden you got the munchies for popcorn. So I'm going to do that. I'll be in the middle of officiating, and all of a sudden I'll say, and we're here to celebrate Stephen Reichel and Joe Mauer, and that's why I'll just like subliminally like throw it in there to make him happy. Last minute I came up with a different idea. And I'm there, and all these Hollywood people are there, and it's like a big deal, and it's in Manhattan, the wedding. And I get up, and I'm speaking onto the chuppah, and I said, you know, Steve, you know, he's got this amazing aura, and he did. His smile, his countenance, and Raquel is the same way, and they reminded me of a biblical character. And I want to just share with everyone this Bible story that I thought you would appreciate. You know, there were 12 tribes, and one of them's name was Joseph, and Joseph was sold into slavery. And eventually, he was thrown into prison. And can you imagine one of the tribes thrown into prison? And yet, the prison warden was nice to him, even let him wander about freely. And the reason why our rabbis teach us is because he had this special chen. He had a special grace about him. And the grace was that he had the name of God on his lips. So you would say, how are you doing? He would say, Baruch Hashem, thank God, I'm doing well. And he had this grace. He had this aura, this shine. And we say shine in Hebrew. It's called an aura. He had this light. So the warden would go over to Joseph, and he would say, Joseph, or Joe Maor. Joe Maor. And I repeated it 3 times. Joseph Maor. What is this light emanating from him? I said, Joe Maor, Joe Maor. And Steve was so happy. I mentioned Joe Mauer, and he's like high-fiving me as he's coming back. Yes, the Joe Mauer wedding, the Joe Mauer wedding. He was so happy. Middle of the wedding, comes over to me and says, I want you to meet one of my clients. His name is Omer Minaya. Omer Minaya was a GM of the Mets. So he says to me, he says to me and Omer, he says, can I ask something? Do we have any Jews on the team? And Omer said, yeah, actually, we have this guy named Sean Green, who is gotten acquired, I think, from Toronto and the Mets. So from Toronto to the Mets. So he was Jewish. There was another guy who was Jewish. There was, I think, maybe 1 or 2 people in the farm system. One was actually, unfortunately, a J for J. But there were 3 Jews on the Mets. So Steve says, do we have a rabbi to cater to them? He says, no. He says, now we do. You'll be the official rabbi of the Mets. I said, okay, I'll be the rabbi of the Mets. Lama lo, lama lo. Interestingly enough, I'd actually, years before, been asked to be the rabbi of the Jets. Because in Perth Amboy, one of my congregants was a fellow by the name of Leon Hess. And he owned the Jets. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I'm a Browns fan. And I was like, no, Joe Namath aside, I can't do it. But I mean, although I was an Indians fan, today I think they're the Guardians, so the whole thing is worth nothing. Lou Badreau was like rolling in his grave, Bob Feller, okay. So, true speaker. So, at this point, Rocky Calavita, I'm just gonna give you my whole 1940s repertoire. So, I said, yeah, I'll be the rabbi of the Mets. So, what did that mean? Well, that year they made the playoffs. And game 7 of, I believe it was game 7 of the playoffs, they were playing the Cardinals. And I was asked to come down, you know, as the rabbi of the Mets, to come down to the stadium. So I came, there was a rabbi of Eshat Torah, his name was Hanan Kaufman. I said, Hanan, I want you should come with me, keep me company. And we are there in the stands, like we are there at the game, and the game is tied 3-3. And I got a text from the GM. Rabbi, why aren't you praying for us? So okay, I don't know what feeling to say. Asher Yoshua Vesech. Like, what do you say? I'm sure there's like some smart, Zokev Kafufim. I don't know, So right after he says that, I don't remember the name of the player on the Cardinals, but they had 2 men on base. The guy hits a double, the Cardinals. It goes all the way to the center field wall. 2 runs come in to score, and the Mets lose the game 5-3. And I get a text, you're a bad rabbi. So I was going to text back, you're a bad GM, it's your team. But I didn't. And that was it, I was fired. No, I wasn't fired, I just never came back. Anyway, that's a little bit of a little segue into the whole Hollywood thing. Being the rabbi in Hollywood is an interesting experience because we all know that it's fake. It's entertainment, but it's fake. And even though we can be manipulated to shed a tear at the ending of a really good movie, and the music, and you got the John Williams score, and it's playing so beautifully, and we feel so moved by it. But at the end of the day, we know that everyone just, they wrap up the set, they go home in their cars, nobody died, no one was fired, love was not broken off, they're married to someone else, the whole thing is not real. And yet, it tugs at our heartstrings. So when they come to a shir, when they come to a Torah class, it's bizarre. Because we're teaching them emes. We're teaching them truth. And when they hear truth, without apology, like just lay it down, what is and what's not. And you may be famous when you walk down the boulevard in Los Angeles, and people may be kissing up to you and trying to curry favor with you and get your attention, but you know and I know it's all fake. Do you know the Hollywood code of shooting? There's a code. I learned the code when I gave the class. The code goes like this. I'd be ready to give the class, and people would come into the Hollywood class, and some are higher up on the totem pole, and some are less. And as they come in, before I give the class, they're shooting each other. And this is the code of shooting. If they shoot you one time, it means they are vastly superior to you, and you should be honored that they glanced in your general direction. And that looks something like this. They come into the class and they say, "Hey, Jeff. Hey. That's the shoot. One shot means you're nothing. Right? You feel like dirty after, like, I need a shower. I got one shot. If they shoot you twice, it means you may have been an extra in some film of theirs, and they want to keep the bond in case they need you again. So there's 2 shots that go along with that. That's like, hey, remember you? You were on that, you were hoping that you'll feed them. You were, right? Yeah, that's right. And if they shoot you with 2 guns, it means they have a script that they want you to read if you have time, in case you have time. And that looks like this. They come in like, hey, I got something for you to read, only if you have time. And they come with like a stack of 300 pages. I just happen to have 10 stacks of just if you have time, read the script. Tell me, let me know what you think. And that is Hollywood. They're all like, let's do lunch. And I'm waiting to give my Torah class, like, let's do lunch. And I'm thinking they're never gonna do lunch. It's not even a real phone. Where they put in the numbers. That's not a phone. That's Hollywood. It ain't real. So when you teach Torah, they're not sure what to do with it. I'll give you an example. I once taught a class in this Hollywood class, once gave a class about Lashon Hara. Now, can you imagine in Hollywood, which is gossip central, to speak about not gossiping? It is literally like speaking to a Martian in Chinese. Like, it's just no connection. And at that time, people would bring their non-Jewish boy and girl friends to my class. And there were these ladies who were in a show that many years ago was very popular. The name of the show was called Charmed. And it had to do with witches. Right. You heard of it? Charmed. So I had the witches of the show Charmed were sitting in front of me. They were not Jewish. And I'm giving this class about not gossiping. And one of them was I think her name was Alyssa Milano. She was like very, very famous teacher, very famous actress. And I'm not speaking Lashon Hara. And she says, Rabbi, don't you know where you are? You're in Hollywood. You're in Hollywood. That's all we do is we gossip. That's literally every conversation. How can you say that we can't? I said, I have a question for you. I said, do you appreciate when people speak negatively about you? You appreciate that? She says, no, but they do. I said, but you don't appreciate it, do you? The Torah says, what is hateful to you, what's hateful to you, don't do it to your friend. So if you don't like it, don't do it to the next person. Judaism appeals to your better angels. It wants you to do better, to be better. So she heard it. We continue speaking, and then we get up to the second part of the class. The second part of the class, we said, not only can you not speak Lashon Hara, but you're not even allowed to listen to someone else gossip. She says, Rabbi, if you tell me I can't even listen to gossip, I am out of here. I said, bye-bye. You want? Goodbye. She said, no, really, seriously. I can't even listen? Why can't I listen to gossip? I said to her, imagine somebody is bad-mouthing you, disparaging you to your friend. Would you want your friend to just sit there and take it? Would you want your friend to just sit there and absorb it? What would you want your friend to do? To protest, to say, be quiet. To my friend, I'm not listening. That's terrible. Goodbye. I said, listening makes you complicit. It makes you a party. You become an enabler to speak in Lashon Hara. It's a unique thing when we're able to stop speaking. And that's what it's like speaking in Hollywood. There was a time when people had certain morals and values, and they were not Torah values, make no mistake. But there were certain values going way back in the Wayback Machine to the Leave It to Beaver, right? My three sons, right? The old times where there were certain lessons at the end, and it was somewhat formulaic. I think it was all killed by Bill Cosby. Everyone thought they had America's dad, and we know America's bad. It's very unfortunate. But today, the pretense is gone. The charade has disappeared. I want to explain to you why, and this is going to be the main idea that I want to mention today. The grand lie of Hollywood is the lie of what makes you and I happy. What makes us happy? You see, no one wants to see a depressing movie. No one wants to leave bummed. We want to leave uplifted. There was a very famous movie many, many years ago called Thelma and Louise. Okay, speaking to the right crowd here. Okay. It was about a renegade guy and two ladies. One of them had ended up having to kill someone. It was an accident. And she and her friend went on the lam. They went running from the law. And as they ran, instead of being afraid, eventually they enjoyed the experience. And there was a sheriff, and he was on their track. He was on their tail. And at the very end of the film, they were cornered. And on one side of them was the sheriff and a whole bunch of squad cars. And the other side was a cliff. And they had this choice. Should they surrender or should they jump the cliff? And they look at each other, this iconic end of the film. They look at each other and they say, you know what? We've lived our best life. We've done our best. And the music swells and the imagery and the sheriff is there. No, don't do it. Ladies, don't do it. He mutters to himself. They can't hear him. And they gun the engine. They put the pedal to the metal all the way down. And they drive off the cliff. And in the original ending of that film, not only do they drive off the cliff, but you see them crash at the bottom with their bodies mangled as they lay there dead. And they played that ending in front of many audiences, test audiences. And guess if the test audiences enjoyed that ending? Terrible. So how did they end up ending the film? Exactly. They drive off the cliff and you see the car flying in the air and it freezes in the air and the credits roll. Now you know and I know what happened to that car. But we can't be bummed. We need to, at least in the end of our, they had another ending also. They had a second ending that they also didn't use. And the second ending was that you see them driving off at the bottom of the cliff. And the audiences didn't like that either because it was not realistic. There was no way that they could fly off a cliff and drive away at the bottom of the cliff. So to see them dead, nay. To see them drive away, unrealistic, nay. So how does it have to end? It has to end with the car freeze framed in the middle of the air, credits roll, maybe in our minds, maybe, just maybe, they're happy somewhere in paradise. Maybe they survived, maybe. Hollywood needs to keep up the charade of the happy ending. And what is that happy ending? We're all products of Disney. It's an amazing thing, but Disney has become the spokesperson for the youth. We all grew up with Disney. The younger generation with Toy Story 1, 2, 3 through 9. Even the older generation, who knows? Maybe The Jungle Book, The Lion King, go further back, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, Dumbo, on and on and on. And in each of these films, Sleeping Beauty, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all? Prince Charming comes, gives a kiss, she wakes up, na 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 na, na 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 na. When you know that. When you wish upon a star, who knows what you're gonna get? Happy, happy, you'll get a kiss and you will live happily ever after. Amen. Ken yehi ratzon. That's happiness. That's joy. That's our ending. And what's the grand lie? The grand lie is that when we aim for that kind of happiness, most of the time we end up with the disappointment. Because you know, and I know, that that's not the life that Hashem wants us to live, that we're destined to live, or that will even give us satisfaction. Raising children is mighty hard, very difficult. And yet, through the difficulty, through the persistence, through the tears and the sweat and the PTA meetings and paying tuitions and wondering if our kids are going to stay on the straight and narrow or whether they're going to wander off into oblivion, God forbid. At the end of that is the satisfaction of knowing that we did our best, and that when we are able to bring up decent, good, God-fearing human beings, we have done something that's so much better, that's so much more significant than the kiss from Prince Charming with the dwarves dancing around and the music happily playing in Technicolor. None of that is real. What's real is Yogati Umatsasi. I worked hard. I tried my best. It was the difficulty that made the payoff a satisfactory one. Chaviv Adam Kav Shalai Mitisha Kavim Shal Chaver. It's better to have one kav of grain, one measure that you worked hard for, than lots of measures from something that you didn't work hard for. We understand that it's not happy, not smiling, not birds singing in harmony to Snow White as she goes around cleaning up the house and making breakfast, but it is truth that we strive for. This Shabbat, this Shabbos, we're speaking to the students who came to our house. They were having a great time learning about Judaism. And one of the students gets up and she's very excited and she says, you know what I like best about Judaism? Community. Community. We celebrate together. I love community. It's my favorite thing about Judaism. And then people began speaking about, what's your favorite thing about Judaism? That became the topic. Then they turned to me and they said, Rabbi, what's your favorite thing about Judaism? I said, you want to hear? I'll tell you my favorite thing. My favorite thing about Judaism is that it's true. That it's true. That's my favorite thing. That I'm not living a lie. That even when it's difficult, even when I'm not feeling it, even when emotionally I'm a little bit checked out, the fact that it's true is my favorite thing. I know that I will always be able to go back to its truth and feel like I'm in the right. I've got it going on. The fact that it's true, better than anything else. In Hollywood, we don't care if it's true. I can lie and lie and lie. If it makes me happy, if you make me happy, if you complete me, my happiness depends on you completing me. It doesn't come from having truth, planting my flag in MS. That's a very, very unique thing that Judaism has. There is a concept that is spoken about in our very left liberal campuses. And they are left and they are liberal. You'll be interested to know that one of my students in UCLA was Ben Shapiro. If you know who he is, he's a commentator. And when I was a rabbi at UCLA, he was very young at that time, 17, 18. And he had just written a book that was published that really went far and wide at a very young age about the left-leaning college teachings. And he was ahead of his time because today we all know, we speak about it. But at that time, it was considered a novel book. And the byword on campuses, the password to get into society was, and still is even more today, open-mindedness. I'm an open-minded person. I'm open to all possibilities. I'm so non-judgmental. I'm so open-minded, my brains have fallen out. I'm open-minded. Hollywood tells us, be open-minded to everything, as if open-mindedness is the goal. So the goal is to be open-minded. And of course it sounds like that, because if I say I'm a closed-minded person, that sounds terrible. That sounds austere. It sounds like I'm so narrow. Religious, closed-minded society, mea sha'arim, careful for them. They'll throw rocks at you, they'll spit at you, closed-minded. But I'm an open-minded person. That's part of the great Hollywood lie. You know, we like to think we're open-minded, but we're not really. You know how I know we're not open-minded? Because if I asked you, is it okay to shoplift? Would you say, yeah, it depends, you know, maybe I can see why it's okay. You know, maybe in a communist society, we have to make sure that the wealth is dispersed. You wouldn't say that, right? You would say, no, it's not okay to shoplift. Is it okay to kidnap? No. Why are you so sure? I thought you're an open-minded person. I could give you a whole list of things that you are sure about. What happened to your open-mindedness? And your answer would be, no, because this is for sure wrong. It turns out that if I were writing this as a mathematical formula, it would sound something like this. X equals clarity. And when I have X, and then I have a decision to make, which would be Y, Z would be closed-mindedness. When I have clarity about what is right and what is wrong, I'm closed-minded. I'm not open to the possibility that Hitler was right. Yes, I'm closed-minded. Nazism is wrong. Hamas is wrong. It's never okay to kidnap little babies or grown men or soldiers. It's not okay. And if you accuse me of not being open-minded, I will give you a list of things that you're not open-minded about. It turns out that open-mindedness is never the value that we're looking for. You know what we're looking for? Listen carefully. We're looking for clarity. And open-mindedness is the vehicle that we use to find clarity. The goal is never to be open-minded. Open-mindedness is not an ends, it's a means to an end. It's the means to find truth. So I'm open-minded to possibilities until I get my clarity. But once I have my clarity, then I'm closed-minded, but not because I'm narrow, but because I now know what is okay and what's not okay. When we don't have clarity, so we are open-minded, so I could listen to the argument. To say that the goal is to remain open-minded, it's like saying the goal of soccer is to find the ball. That's not the goal of soccer. Imagine the whole game, I'm looking for the ball. Where's the ball? Where's the ball? I found the ball, I won the game. No. What is the game? How do you play the game? To kick the ball into the net. Now, of course, you got to have a ball to kick to the net. So the goal is not to find the ball. The goal is to kick the ball into the net. The goal is not to be open-minded. The goal is to get clarity so that you can begin your life by living up to clarity, by living up to truth, by living up to righteousness. The goal is to get that clarity, what is right, what is wrong. Now the game begins. Once I know what's right, what's wrong, now can I live up to what's right and wrong? That's the game. The game of life is to live up to truth, not to find truth. To finding truth is a prerequisite. But if all your life you're just looking for what's real, at what point do you live up to it? At what point do you say, now I got it, now let me see if I can live up to it? Are we on the same page here? It's a very important thing. When I have parents who say to me, I have students who say to me, I say, did you go to Jewish school? And they'll say, no, my parents were very open-minded. They let me choose. I say, that's very interesting. Did they let you choose whether to go to school at all? No, they sent me to school. I said, why didn't they let you choose about that? Well, they understood that math and science are important. So things they had clarity about, they took a stand. Things that were a little bit wishy-washy, they let you choose. Our job is to find the clarity so that we can live up to it. Hollywood's job is to muddy the waters. I don't know what's right. The protagonist, the villain, the hero gets flipped on its head again and again. With a little bit of musical manipulation, with a little bit of graphics, I'll be left in a moral quandary. There was a film, I never saw it, but it was a film about the massacre in Munich that happened during the Olympics. That the Jews, the Israeli athletes, I think 14 of them or so, were murdered by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. And the Mossad decided that all of the perpetrators, all the terrorists, are going to be killed. They're going to be killed. And there was this targeted assassination that Israel is so good at. So someone had to make a film. Now, if you ask me, that's a good enough plot line for a film. What a plot line. To go and hunt the villains, each one of them thinking they're, Black September, I think was the name of the organization. Black September. I think it's a good enough plot line to hunt down these animals. No. What has to be the plot line? Not hunting down Black September, but the moral quandary that someone in the Mossad have. Should I be killing those people? That's your plot line? Of course, in Hollywood, that's the plot line. Because if I could flip morality on its head, then I have a story. Now everything is muddy. What's good and what's not good? And you know what the result is? The result, my friends, I'm sorry to say, is in NYU and Columbia, people, Americans, who had their tuition paid for, who are living in the lap of luxury with all the freedoms that we talk about on Independence Day, marching with pro-Hamas and pro-Hezbollah slogans. Why? Because the waters of morality were muddied by Hollywood. And who knows who's really the villain? Maybe this did happen to the women in the Nova Festival. Maybe it didn't. Maybe Nir Oz, maybe Barry. Who knows? Maybe they deserved it. Maybe let's go back in time. It didn't start now. It started 75 years ago. Why something? Maybe it started 3,000 years ago. What are you, just arbitrarily throwing out numbers? But that's what Hollywood does. Says the Torah, if I learn and I daven and I try to connect, I have clarity. I understand what is right. Uvacharta b'chaim. I have put in front of you good and life and evil and death. Please, my friends, choose life. Get clarity. Don't listen to the muddy waters of the naysayers. You know, we know, I know that those who speak with agendas because they themselves are full of dysfunction. They themselves have cheated on their marriages, not once, not twice, but it's so common that everyone laughs about it in the bar as they speak to each other over martinis, who's the latest person that they betted. That's Hollywood. And we hear it and we see it again and again, and eventually it becomes the new normal. And morality disappears. The idea of independence, and I'll wrap up with this. The idea of independence and an Independence Day is not that we are free to do whatever we want, no matter how much it hurts the next person, no matter what is good and what is evil. It is true that by law, we can get away with more than other countries. But part of independence is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator, has given us this beautiful country with all of its warts and all of its flaws in order to do what we're doing right now over a nice bagel and a schmear, to sit and learn Torah and to say, Hashem, this is where I plant my flag. This is my truth. This is my emes. And I won't be muddied. Democrats and Republicans, lie after lie. Al tizvada l'rishus, says Pirkei Avos, don't get involved. There are lies from both sides. I used to give I had a radio show for years in New York, and I'd say a stance, and they said, Rabbi, I don't understand. Are you Republican? Are you Democrat? I said, I'm neither. I'm a Torah Jew. I look for truth. Wherever truth is, I will follow. And wherever it's not, I won't listen to the noise. So I give you each a bracha on this Independence Day. You should follow the Torah. Listen to the truth of it. Understand and protect yourself from the lies and the falsehoods that bombard us, that make us almost immune and numb to the morality. The goal is never to figure out what's true or what's right. The goal is to live up to emes. And with that way, we will create and keep on building this beautiful community right here in Roslyn. Thank you so much.